The escrow officer slid the folder across the table and said, "Congratulations, you're a homeowner." I just sat there for a second, staring at my own signature on the last page. Mine. The condo was actually mine. I know how that sounds. Dramatic, maybe even a little sad. But when you've spent 7 years working as an ER nurse, pulling double shifts, eating cereal for dinner 3 nights a week because your rent ate everything else, a moment like that hits different. It doesn't feel like a real estate transaction. It feels like proof. Proof that all the exhaustion, the skipped vacations, the second-hand furniture, the nights you fell asleep still in your scrubs. It added up to something. I didn't cry. I smiled, shook the escrow officer's hand, and drove home to my apartment with 3 keys on a plain steel ring. One for the front door of the building, one for the unit, one for the storage locker in the basement. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a while before going inside. I didn't start the engine, I just held them. Nobody knew. That was intentional. My older brother and his wife had been living in a 2-bedroom apartment about 20 minutes from me for the past 4 years. They had 2 kids, my niece who had just turned 7, and my nephew who was 9. The apartment was tight, sure, and they complained about it constantly, but they also hadn't saved a dollar toward anything better. My sister-in-law worked part-time. My brother had switched jobs 3 times in 2 years. Every conversation we had about money somehow ended with me being the answer to a problem I didn't create. It started small, the way these things always do. 2 years before I closed on the condo, I was at my parents' house for Easter. My brother mentioned offhand that their lease was up and rent was going up $400 a month. My mom made a sympathetic sound. My sister-in-law looked right at me. "You've been saving forever," she said. "Don't you think it's time you helped out a little?" I put down my fork. Helped out how? You don't have kids. You don't have a husband. You're just one person. She shrugged like she was doing math out loud. "If you got a bigger place, we could split the bills. The kids would have a yard. It would be good for everyone." I looked around the table. My dad was suddenly very interested in his mashed potatoes. My mom tilted her head like she was actually considering it. My brother leaned back in his chair with that expression he gets when he thinks something is already decided. "I'm saving for my own place," I said. "That's not being selfish. That's called having a plan." My sister-in-law laughed. Not a mean laugh, but the kind that's worse, the kind that says she doesn't take you seriously. "You've been saying that for years. In the meantime, these kids are sharing a room." "They're kids," I said. "Kids share rooms." My brother finally spoke. "We just think family should look out for each other." "I've been looking out for you since you moved here," I said. "I covered your security deposit when you first signed that lease. I bought the kids' school supplies for 2 years straight." I looked out. Nobody said anything. My mom changed the subject to whether we wanted more rolls. I drove home that night with a new rule. When I found my place, I wasn't telling anyone until the papers were signed and the locks were already in my name. It took 14 more months. I worked every overtime shift I could get. I ate lunch from home every single day. I stopped going to events that cost money and started saying I was tired, which wasn't even a lie. I was always tired. I had a spreadsheet on my phone I checked like other people check social media. Every time the number went up, I felt something close to calm. I found the condo through a coworker who was moving out of state. 3rd floor unit in a 6-story building, 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, a balcony that looked out a row of oak trees. She wasn't listing it publicly yet. I toured it on a Tuesday afternoon in February, still in my coat, and stood in the empty living room knowing I was going to buy it. I told exactly 2 people. My coworker who sold it to me and my real estate attorney. That was it. Not my parents, not my best friend. Nobody. When the keys were finally in my hand, I drove to the condo before I went anywhere else. I parked, went upstairs, and unlocked the door for the first time as the owner. The unit was empty and smelled like fresh paint. I kicked off my shoes on the tile and walked every room in my socks, opening closet doors, testing the faucets, standing on the balcony in the cold air looking at the trees below. I didn't throw a party, I didn't pop champagne. I ordered Thai food, sat on the floor of my new living room with my back against the wall, and ate it straight from the containers. It was the best meal I'd had in years. For a few weeks I kept both places, finishing out the last month of my apartment lease while slowly moving things to the condo. I didn't post anything online. I told my family I was in the middle of a transition, vague enough to be true. The first crack in the silence happened because of my coworker Steph. We'd celebrated my closing at work, nothing big, just a little cake in the break room. Steph posted a photo to her personal page, a group of us around a sheet cake that said, "She's a homeowner" in blue icing. She tagged me. She meant well, I know that. She was genuinely excited for me and had no reason to think I was keeping anything from anyone. I didn't see the post until I was already in bed that night. By then it had been up for 6 hours. My phone lit up with a text from my brother at 11:14 p.m. "Since when do you own a place?" I put the phone face down and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The next message came at 11:31. "Why didn't you say anything?" Then at 11:47 from my sister-in-law, "2 bedrooms. Interesting." That last one turned my stomach, not because it was rude, because it was calculating. 2 bedrooms. She wasn't congratulating me. She was doing inventory. I didn't respond that night. In the morning I sent my brother a short message. "Just closed. Still settling in. I'll be in touch." He called twice. I let it go to voicemail both times. On Saturday morning, I was unpacking boxes when I heard the door to the building's main entrance buzz open from the parking lot. I looked at the intercom screen. I hadn't buzzed anyone in. Someone must have caught the door as another resident left. I didn't think much of it until there was a knock on my unit door. I looked through the peephole. My brother was standing in the hallway with my sister-in-law and both kids. My nephew was holding a grocery bag. My niece was tugging on her sleeve. I opened the door. "Hey," my brother said in that voice he uses when he's trying to seem relaxed about something he planned very carefully. "We were in the neighborhood. You don't end up in my building on a Saturday morning by accident." He'd found the address from the county assessor's website, which is public record. I figured that out later. I stepped back and let them in because I didn't have the energy for a scene in the hallway. My sister-in-law walked in ahead of my brother, which told me everything about whose idea this visit was. She moved through the living room slowly, the way people do when they're forming opinions. She pressed her palm flat on the kitchen counter. She looked toward the hallway where the bedrooms were. She turned to me with a small smile. "This is really nice," she said. The way she said it made it sound like a problem. "Thanks," I said. I didn't move. I didn't offer coffee. I didn't invite anyone to sit down. "2 bedrooms," she said again. I used the second one as an office. Still. She looked at my brother, who looked at the floor. "It's a lot for one person." My nephew had already wandered toward the balcony door, pressing his nose against the glass. My niece was spinning slowly in the middle of the living room with her arms out. They were just being kids. I didn't blame them. "You know," my sister-in-law said, "the kids have been asking about what it would be like to have more space. Our place just isn't working anymore. We've been thinking." "I'm going to stop you there," I said. She blinked. "This is my home. I bought it. I'm not looking for roommates. I'm not looking to split costs. And I'm not in a position to solve your housing situation." I said it evenly. No anger, just clarity. "I'd love to have the kids over for dinner sometime, but this isn't a conversation I'm open to having." The silence in the room went sharp. My brother finally looked up. "That's kind of cold, don't you think?" "I think it would have been cold to answer that question at Easter 2 years ago," I said. "I was polite about it then. I'm being clear about it now." My sister-in-law picked up her bag from the counter. She'd set it down like she was planning to stay, and turned toward the kids. "Let's go," she said, voice bright and false. They left. I closed the door, locked it, and stood there for a moment with my hand still on the deadbolt. I thought I should change my locks. I hadn't switched them out since closing. I called a locksmith that same afternoon. He came Monday morning, rekeyed the front door, the secondary deadbolt, and the storage unit. I watched him work and thought about how I should have done this the day I closed. I also called the front desk of my building and updated the access list. My name only. No authorized alternates. 2 weeks went by. My brother texted a few times. Nothing threatening, just pressure dressed up as concern. "Mom's worried about you. You've been distant." That kind of thing. I responded minimally, kept things surface level, gave nothing. Then I had to travel for a nursing conference. 4 days in Phoenix, fully paid by the hospital. I set my mail to hold, watered my plants the morning I left, and didn't think twice about the condo. The locks were new. The building had security cameras in the lobby, and by the elevators, I'd done everything right, except I hadn't told the front desk I'd be gone. I was at dinner with colleagues on the second night when my phone rang. It was Mr. Nakamura, a retired engineer who lived 2 floors below me and had introduced himself when I first moved in. Quiet man, observant. We'd talked a handful of times. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said. "I wasn't sure if I should call, but there's music coming from your unit. And earlier I heard what sounded like more than one person walking around up there." My stomach dropped. I thanked him, hung up, and pulled up the building's security app on my phone. My building had cameras in the lobby but not in individual units. I hadn't set up anything inside the condo yet. I could see the lobby feed. I scrolled back through the footage from that afternoon. There she was, my sister-in-law, walking through the lobby with both kids and 2 rolling bags. She held the front door open with her hip and waved someone else in behind her, my brother, carrying a cooler. They hadn't buzzed in. They'd waited outside the main door until another resident came out and held it for them, the same way they'd done the first time. My hands went cold. I switched to the hallway camera for my floor, watched the timestamp. 4:17 p.m. My brother stood in front of my door, leaned close to the keypad lock and tried something, then tried again. Then my sister-in-law reached into her jacket pocket and held something up to the door. The door opened. I set down my fork. My colleague across from me said something I didn't hear. They hadn't made a copy of my key. I'd rekeyed everything. But my building also had a secondary digital entry option, a code I'd set up during move-in and written down in a notebook I kept in the kitchen junk drawer. I'd used the same code I used for everything back then, a 4-digit number my sister-in-law would have known from years of shared family passwords. My birthday, she guessed it or she'd seen it somewhere, and I had never changed it. I excused myself from dinner, went to the hallway of the restaurant, and called the building's front desk. The night attendant confirmed that my unit appeared to be occupied. He'd assumed I had guests I'd authorized. I did not authorize anyone, I said. I need you to call the police and have my unit cleared. I'm out of town. I can send you verification. He put me on hold. I stood in that hallway with my back against the wall, listening to hold music, staring at the fire exit sign above the door. When he came back, he said he'd made the call. I pulled up the lobby camera feed again and watched the timestamp tick forward. 22 minutes later, 2 officers walked through the lobby. I watched them take the elevator up, watched the hallway camera, watched them knock, watched the door open. My brother appeared in the frame. Even from the overhead angle, I could see him trying to explain. He gestured behind him. One of the officers stepped past him into the unit. 4 minutes later, my sister-in-law came out first, pulling my niece by the hand. My nephew came behind, head down. My brother came last, talking the whole time. The officers guided them toward the elevator. I called the responding officer's number once they were downstairs. He was straightforward. They claim you gave them permission to stay while you were traveling. There's no record of that with building management. We can't confirm authorization, so we've asked them to leave the premises. They're gathering their things from the lobby now. He paused. Do you want to pursue this further, or just document it? I had thought about this moment, or something like it, more than I wanted to admit. What I'd do if something like this happened, whether I'd be willing to follow through. Document everything, I said. And yes, I want to pursue it. They entered my home without my permission. I'd like to know what my options are. He walked me through it. Unauthorized entry, possible trespassing. The security footage from the building would be key. He said an officer would follow up when I returned. I went back to the dinner table, ordered dessert, and finished my conference. There was nothing else I could do from Phoenix, and falling apart in a hotel room wasn't going to help anyone. When I got home, I did 3 things before I unpacked my suitcase. I walked every room to assess what they'd touched. I changed the digital entry code on the lock, and I knocked on Mr. Nakamura's door to thank him. He had more than I expected. He'd been home all afternoon and had heard them clearly. Laughter, the television, the kids running back and forth. He'd documented the times. He offered to give a statement if I needed one. I told him I'd let him know. The condo itself wasn't destroyed. They'd used the kitchen, left dishes in the sink, slept in the second bedroom. The bed in my office room had been slept in, sheets rumpled, pillow dented. There was a half-eaten bag of chips on my kitchen counter and a ring from a can on the coffee table I'd bought the week before. I stood in the doorway of the second bedroom for a long time. Then I got a trash bag and started cleaning. My brother called while I was doing laundry. I let it ring. He called again. I let it ring. He texted, "It was just a few days, we would have cleaned up. You didn't have to call the cops on your own family." I put the phone in a drawer. My attorney called the next morning after I reached out. She was brief and practical, which I appreciated. Unauthorized entry in this state is a civil matter unless there's evidence of forced entry or theft, but she said the building's camera footage was solid documentation and I had grounds to pursue a no trespass order. She also suggested I send a formal written notice to my brother and sister-in-law before any additional action, both as a warning and as a paper trail. I told her to draft it. It went out by certified mail 3 days later. My brother signed for it. My sister-in-law texted me within the hour. Are you serious right now? This is insane. You're treating us like criminals. I read the message, set the phone down, and went to make coffee. My mom called that evening. She'd talked to my brother. Her voice had that careful tone she uses when she's been assigned a task she doesn't want to do. He's really upset, she said. I know. He feels like you humiliated them. They entered my home without permission while I was out of town, I said. They used a code they had no right to use, on a door they had no right to open. He says you'd given them the code before, for emergencies, not to use my condo as a free hotel. She went quiet for a second. Then, I just don't understand why you couldn't have handled this without the police. I took a breath because they didn't ask, they didn't call, they didn't say, hey, we need somewhere to stay this week, is that okay? They just walked in. If I'd called first, they would have made promises and then done it anyway. The police were the only language that was going to land. She didn't have an answer for that. We talked for a few more minutes about nothing important and then got off the phone. The fallout moved in waves. My mom stayed quiet but didn't push me further. My dad texted once to say he thought I had every right to do what I did, which surprised me. A cousin reached out to say she hoped we could all get past it. I appreciated the intention but didn't respond. A mutual family friend sent a long message about forgiveness that I read once and archived. My brother went silent for a while. Not forever, I knew that, but quiet enough that I could breathe. At work, a few people knew the broad strokes. The nursing supervisor, who'd known me for 4 years, said, matter-of-factly, good, you held the line. That was enough for me. The no trespass notice didn't go to court. My attorney advised that pursuing it further would be costly and the outcome uncertain. The building footage showed entry but not forcible entry, and the digital code issue muddied the waters. What we had was documentation and a formal warning. That, she said, was often enough. She was right. My brother and sister-in-law didn't come back. What nobody tells you when you're in the middle of something like this is that the hardest part isn't the confrontation. The confrontation is actually the clearest moment. You know exactly what's happening, you know exactly what you need to do, and you do it. The hard part is afterward, when it's quiet, when the laundry's done and the dishes are clean, and you're sitting on your couch in your own living room at 9 o'clock on a Tuesday night. That's when the doubt creeps in. Not about whether I was right. I've never once doubted that. But the other kind of doubt, the kind that asks whether things could have been different. Whether there was a version of this where I told my brother about the condo at Christmas dinner, and he hugged me and said congratulations and that was it. Whether my sister-in-law could have been happy for me without calculating what it meant for her. I think I already know the answer. I think I knew it at that Easter dinner 2 years ago when she looked at me and said, "You're just one person like that," was a reason my plans should bend to hers. The oak trees outside my balcony have started dropping leaves. I've been putting a chair out there in the evenings with a blanket and a cup of something warm and just sitting with it. The street below gets quiet around 7. Sometimes Mr. Nakamura is out walking, and he raises his hand and I raise one back. A few weeks ago, I finally bought a proper dining table, real wood, seats 4. I had a couple of friends from work over for dinner. We ate pasta and opened a bottle of wine and talked until midnight. Nobody asked me to justify the square footage. Nobody looked around the room calculating what it was worth to them. They just sat at my table and ate my food and laughed, and when they left they said thank you and I said come back soon and meant it. I changed the digital code on the door again after that, just because it made me feel better. New building, new habits. My brother reached out last month. Not an apology, I don't think he's built for those, but something softer than what he'd said before. He asked if we could get coffee. I told him I'd think about it. I'm still thinking. My sister-in-law has stayed quiet. I don't know if that's shame or strategy, and honestly, I've stopped trying to figure out the difference. What I know is this. The condo is mine, the keys are mine, the lock code is mine, and I'm the only one who knows it. When I come home from a 12-hour shift and put my bag down by the door and kick off my shoes on the tile, there is nobody waiting to tell me I have too much space for one person. The silence is not empty, it's just mine. I bought this place with 7 years of overtime and skipped vacations and cereal dinners and a spreadsheet I checked every morning before I got out of bed. I didn't ask permission, I didn't wait for a committee vote. I did it on my own, quietly, and then I defended it the same way. Some people have told me I was too harsh. That family deserves more patience than that. Maybe they're right. I've turned it over enough times to know I'll never fully settle the question. But I also know that the version of me who would have opened her door and said, yes, of course, come in, use the second room, stay as long as you need. That version of me would be sleeping in someone else's house right now, still waiting for a thank you that was never coming. I choose the condo. I choose the oak trees and the quiet evenings and the dining table that seats 4 people I actually want there. I choose the deadbolt and the new code and the neighbor downstairs who called me because he thought I should know. And I choose myself. Without apology.